I'm an entrepreneur. I lead a startup called Attestis. We're a French startup. We're a partner of CSTB. CSTB manages a startup accelerator just one floor below here. We come to this office from time to time, but our base is in the south of France. And we're going to present a very concrete use case for the real estate and construction industry that relies on blockchain. Relies a lot on the kind of same technological principles as what Nicolas just presented, but for something completely different, as multi-items would say. The angle we're taking is that we're at the intersection of the Venn diagram between Internet of Things and blockchain, and that's very interesting because taken separately, these two technologies are kind of disruptive. But if you bring them together, they're even more disruptive. I mean, on one side, you have the Internet of Things that allows to generate a massive amount of data about the physical world. And it's kind of unprecedented. Previously, where you had to have data about the physical world, you had to send someone to actually measure it. With the Internet of Things, you can equip the physical world so that it generates its own data very cheaply, very efficiently in terms of energy. So we now have beacons, for instance, that report their location and the state of sensors for years without having to be recharged. And they cost a few dollars or euros. With the blockchain, at the end of the day, it's about the cost of proof. You can now massively scale the proof of legitimacy of data thanks to the blockchain. Previously, when you had to build trust, you had, again, to send someone, to appoint someone to embody that trust. Be it a notary, be it a lawyer, be it a banker. Now, with blockchain, you have cryptographic and telecom processes that bring that cost down by 2 orders of magnitude. And I'm not kidding. I mean, I'm not from the construction or real estate industry. I'm from software and telecoms. And when we had this use case, and we looked at different ways of ensuring trust in the digital data we're manipulating, and we'll come to that later, we compared different alternatives. And the traditional way of archiving data in a secure manner was costing something like $5 per document per year. Using similar technological approaches that Nicolas just presented, we're down to 5 euro cents per year. So 1,000-fold cheaper. So if you bring the two together, you bring a unique opportunity for disruption in a lot of use cases. And the one we're in is really having this legal proof about the physical world. Basically being able to prove that something is out there, really, without having to actually send someone to witness it. And there's many use cases about that, and I'm going to talk to you about one that we're actually commercializing in France and soon in other markets, which is in the real estate industry, something about urban planning permission, and building permits. In many countries, I'll come to that, you have to display physically the building permit on a sign. In France, they look like that. The format of the sign is actually regulated by the urban planning code. Many national legislation have similar constraints. And that's a bit crazy. I mean, we're in the 21st century, and you have this thing Julien said, the whole construction industry was always, what, 10 trillion? Well, the figure I had in mind was 2, so I'm glad you stated that. That depends on just signs. Why is that? Because if you can't display that sign, at least in France and countries we looked at, you are facing a legal risk, because then someone can claim that you never advertised to the neighbors and the local associations that something was going to be built, and they can appeal to the planning permission. And it can be a catastrophe for the building owner. Because if you face an appeal while you have started the construction works, then first you have to stop them. You have to litigate in court for 2 to 5 years, so the net result is millions of euros in sunk costs. And worst materializes, you have to even to destroy what you've started building. So we started in France, and we looked at more than 50 countries covering 80% of the world's population. It turns out that either for planning regulations labor regulations to ensure that the workers in the construction site are only legal workers, and for environmental protection regulations. In more than 29 countries, representing more than 7 million building permits per year, notice sign has to be put there, continuously visible from a public way for the whole duration of the construction project. They take different shapes and forms and colors. I think in Indonesia they're named papan kuning. In Russia it's pasport objekta. In Turkey I wouldn't be able to pronounce it. In Canada, much easier, it's permis de construire in the Quebec, and the planning notice or development notice in the English-speaking part. In the US it's the same. I believe I was talking to a Portuguese gentleman at lunch. It's called Alvara de Construcción. You have to display them in signs. And if you don't, well, you either face fines, third-party appeals, and dramatic consequences. So what do we do about that? Well, in France, this is what building owners usually do. It's a pretty cumbersome process. The building owner has to arrange for someone to go and first print and install the sign. And we have a special profession which is very afraid of the blockchain. In fact, we're not, because we know them very well. It's called judicial officer. They're kind of paid officers that are going to physically go and witness something. And their word has, I would say, a favorable strength in terms of reliability in the eyes of courts. It's a profession that doesn't exist in all countries, but I think that's very interesting. The topic that Nicolas was bringing is how do you bring the blockchain proof to the legal world? I mean, today it's not recognized. There's a problem of recognizability of the blockchain proof. This profession has a role to play. But today we simply write sworn affidavits. I hereby, blah, blah, witness that a sign was physically there on this date and that day. And this is actually ingrained in all the real estate developer processes in France, at least. All real estate developers in France, 100% of them, they call those guys 3 times for a duration of 2 months to actually attest that the sign was physically there. And if they don't, it's actually a big hassle. Because, and even if they do, because the problem is that the guy is going to be there only 3 times, and something can happen to the sign in between. What do you do then? And the problem that it happens. These are real pictures of building permit signs that we took at our customer's site. Maybe you can see on the one on the left there's a little brown spot. That's the corner of the sign. The place where the building owner asked us to put the building permit sign was unfortunately the place where they shovel snow. We see a heap of snow that's about 3 meters high. The one in the middle is actually quite funny. The real estate developer, and our customers are mainly real estate developers, people like Bouygues Immobilier, Nexity, Kaufman and Bouygues. They asked us, you have to put the sign at a very specific space, because there's legal constraints. It has to be on the lot and visible from the public thoroughfare. Unfortunately for that guy, the place where they asked us to put the sign was just in front of the town's mayor house. And the mayor, I mean the municipal elections are coming up in France pretty soon, he didn't want the neighbors to know that he had authorized a building permit for something to be built at that place. So he asked the technical services of the municipality to remove the sign. And we took the photograph, all that was left was literally the 2 holes for the sign. The one on the right is actually far more serious, and it's a problem that many real estate developers face. That the sign was vandalized. And the problem with that, in the traditional way of doing things, is that the building owner doesn't know about it. And if you don't know about it, then someone can claim, well, okay, I don't care that you've started your works, but your sign wasn't there for at least a month, and I was not able to exercise my third-party appeal right, so you stop everything and we litigate, and then you're in deep trouble. So what do? Well, this is what we've come up with. We have developed a technology that allows to prove that something is continuously present at some place. And this technology relies on geolocation and blockchain. I'll spare you the details, but we have a complete end-to-end suite of technologies, starting from beacons embedded in the signs that send data to a platform that secures them in the blockchain. How does that work? Basically, it's the same principle that Nicolas described. It's called anchoring. We anchor the data in the blockchain. So our beacons, they're physically embedded in the signs with some anti-tampering devices that are able to detect if the beacon is ripped out or things like that. And we send a hexadecimal string over an Internet of Things network called Sigfox. I don't know if some of you are familiar with IoT technologies. There's two major IoT wireless communication technologies today. One is standard, it's called LoRaWAN, and one is proprietary, it's from Sigfox. So using Sigfox, we could have used one or the other. I flipped the coin instead of this. But Sigfox. Now, the advantage about Sigfox is that it's a unique network that's worldwide. It's a big advantage over IoT technology. That's not the topic. Basically, it's just a pipe. It's a data pipe between the beacon and the platform. The nice thing about this pipe is it's cheap. It's very energy efficient. The bad thing is that it's very small bandwidth. We call it 0G actually. You know now already at 5G. 0G, I mean it sends basically 12 bytes of data every 10 minutes. So basically the most we can send in one message is a hexadecimal string with 24 characters. We unpack it, and basically what we have in there is the latitude, the longitude, and the state of the sensors in the beacon. So we have a tripwire, we have a GPS data, that's the latitude and longitude, but we also have a precision indicator. We have an inclination indicator. We have a shock indicator to measure the acceleration if someone just ripped out the sign. And our platform is basically going to do what Nicolas described, is generate a document, a PDF document, which is basically a position log, a state log of the beacon. We're going to run that through a hash algorithm. We have an extra trick. We assemble, that's something you should look into, we should have a talk about that. We assemble the hashes. Is everybody familiar with a hash is? It's basically a big unique number that's generated from a much larger set of data, and it's bijective. So, and it's not bijective actually. It's interest of it. You can go from the document to the big number, but you cannot regenerate the document from the big number, which ensures confidentiality, and that's why there's no GDPR problem in the blockchain because of that. But the problem with blockchain, you mentioned energy efficiency, which is related to cost actually, because each blockchain transaction incurs a cost, even if it's minute, if you just consider one transaction. But if you consider thousands of or millions of transactions, it starts to accumulate. So in fact, we don't anchor every piece of data we receive. We aggregate them in data structures called Merkle tree. And a Merkle tree is what? It's a hash of hashes. It's basically a root with leaves that can be very easily and efficiently recomputed, and each of the leaves of the tree are the individual hashes of individual documents. And that one is bijective. You can find every leaf from the root and vice versa. And that is stored in the Bitcoin. So another debate that you raised is which blockchain to use. And for us, it was a no-brainer. For a use case like ours that requires public accountability, independent auditability. I mean, we're a small company, we're 8 people, we're a startup, you can't just disappear like that. But our customers, they need to prove that their sign was there until 6 months after the end of the construction work, because that's the law in France. Anyone can appeal a planning permission in France until 6 months after the end of the works, if you're not able to prove that the bloody sign was there. When you're a real estate developer, 6 months after the end of the construction, I mean, it's an eternity. The project itself lasts 3 to 4 years, and normally, if you do your job well as a real estate developer, 6 months after the end of the construction work, you should have sold all the apartments or the warehouse or the commercial real estate, whatever. The interest of the Bitcoin blockchain is that even if we disappear, our customers will still be able to prove the validity of the proofs we've generated for them. So I'm going to show you how it works. Normally I should have a browser somewhere. except someone has closed it. Shit, great. Let me just launch Chrome. There you go. There you go. So this is our platform. I'm an admin, so you're going to see all our customers and all our projects. I'm going to look at this one, which is one of the photographs I showed you. So this is the user interface that our customers use to view their building permits and view the data generated by our beacon. So this is the building permit in France. And here we have the position logs generated by our beacons. So you can see it has already 113 position logs, and it was displayed since a few days. And for each position log, you can see here the status of the blockchain anchoring. So, little green tick, so far so good. What's more interesting in the case of that customer is that you can start seeing some reds. So that's an interesting story. Let me just scroll down. We installed this sign on May 31st, very precisely at 13:17. On the night we installed it at 3:15 in the night, it was tampered with and vandalized. And we were able to detect that on the spot, right the day after, and put the building permit in the compliance state just afterwards. In fact, it turns out there's a local resistance to the building project in the neighborhood. And some goons are going out at night just ripping off the sign. It's one of the photographs what's interesting here is that if this goes to court, and this will likely go to court, we can, for each of the data points of our beacon, prove that the data that was generated is legit. How do we do that? For each of the data points, we generate this document, which is a position log. And this is then checksummed using a cryptographic algorithm, and that checksum goes in a blockchain transaction through this Merkle tree process. And the interesting thing is that you can then verify that this is a legit document independently of us. And that's where the judicial officers, for instance, have a role to play. You have, for instance, a judicial officer in France and here in Paris called Jérôme Legrain. He runs a blockchain anchoring verifier on his website. So anybody can go on his website and verify the legitimacy of a document that has been anchored in the blockchain. So I can take this PDF document, I'm going to do it live for you. I mean this is production data. I'm going to download it to the download folder of this PC. There you go. And then I'm going to upload it, okay, that's the one, to this website. And it checks that, yes, this document did exist in this exact digital form, and it's been anchored in the blockchain at least since June 1st at 4:23 GMT. That's solid proof that this data wasn't forged. And the good thing is that we're able to have a complete and trustworthy audit trail that builds trust and secures the legitimate interest of the building owner. So really this is interesting because a lot of people are asking, what can you do with the blockchain? What are the real use cases? Well, this is a real one. Looking from a presentation, okay, it's here. And very concrete. And it's already been adopted by the real estate developers in France. We're looking to expand internationally, and I'd be very curious to talk to people from various countries to see if the same problems arise in their countries. And just a note of humor here, I mean, even Apple needs building permit notice line to see the picture taken in San Francisco for the renovation of the Apple Store. Thank you.